Hello, and welcome to the Collaborative Community Conversations webinar series, Bridging Town and Gown Lessons and Innovative in Back to School Programs webinar. I would like to introduce to you Valeria Chase, the Program Manager of Government Affairs and Community Relations at Northern Arizona University, and she's going to get us started with today's webinar.
Hello, everyone. This session is dedicated to exploring the evolution and significance of back-to-school initiatives, focusing on how they strengthen town-gown relationships and empower communities for a successful school year. We are happy to have Mauli Moat from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Tom Fontaine from the Borough Manager of State College, Pennsylvania, and our first presenter, Dr. Lindsay Mason from Colorado State University. They will share their valuable insights, lessons learned, and current initiatives. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Valeria. Good day, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Lindsay Mason. I work at Colorado State University, where I serve as the director of a unit called Off-Campus Life. We help students with off-campus housing and support them as they continue to live in the community. And we are definitely one of the big town-gown partnerships between Colorado State University and the city of Fort Collins. In fact, we actually have a role that is shared between my office and the city's neighborhood services called the Community Liaison. So I'm excited to chat with you all today about an event that we have been running for 25 years called Community Welcome. I also want to, before I talk about the details of this event, I also want to be transparent that we have run this event for 25 years and we actually just sunsetted it, which I'll talk about why we have decided to sunset it. But I still thought that this was valuable to bring to this webinar because while this program may not make sense in its form that we've been running it for the past few decades, in our community, we do see it as a program that can still make sense in some communities. So we want to share with you some ways that we thought it was successful, but then again, also talk about why we decided to sunset it. The Community Welcome Program, it happens in the beginning of the school year, and I'll share that I think one of the important reasons to have a kickoff event at the beginning of your academic year is to help students and long-term residents build routines from the beginning of the year. I know I'm like this. I think a lot of humans are like this. It's really easy for us to get settled into our routines. You know, like maybe I'm going to start a new job and I'm going to drive to that job for the first time. And if I drive to that job maybe 2 or 3 times the same way, that probably just becomes my routine and that's how I get to the job. And if I wanted to change that, like if I wanted to start biking or I wanted to start taking the bus, it is doable, but it will probably take some inertia from me to change out of that routine. And unless I put in some intentional effort to change that routine, I will likely just continue to get to that job the way that I have been. And so Community Welcome for us has been a significant event because we are trying to help neighbors establish routines early, particularly neighbors that are new to the neighborhood. We wanted to immediately speak with them at the beginning of the academic year or the beginning of their lease to say, okay, you want to get to know your neighbors, you want to build a relationship with your neighbors, you know, we want to help them start building these routines of at least saying hello, checking in with one another when they see each other, so that later, if they really do need to check in with one another, it takes less inertia to do so because it's already become a part of their normal routine. So, okay, thanks, Loretta. Now we can go to the next slide. All right, so the Community Welcome event between the city of Fort Collins and Colorado State University has happened on the first Wednesday of the fall semester. The Wednesday was intentional because the student government at Colorado State University hosts their Senate meetings on Wednesday evenings, and we were able to build up a relationship with our student government over the years where they agreed, because they saw the value in the program, to always cancel their very first Senate meeting and require all their senators to come walk in the program with us. So we always had a really heavy participation from our student government members, which was great. The program is a kind of knock and talk style engagement where groups of folks are walking around, specifically around the neighborhoods that are close to the campus. Historically, those neighborhoods have seen a very high mixture between student neighbors and what we refer to as long-term residents. And having long-term residents and students live in neighborhoods with one another brings a lot of joy and celebration and fun environments, and it also brings challenges. So we were really focused on those neighborhoods close to campus that saw those high mixtures. That's one of the biggest reasons that we have sunsetted this event in our community, because in the last 10 years, we have had a huge amount of building of big student-focused apartment complexes that are very close to campus, some of them bordering our property. And so we have less students that are living in these detached home neighborhoods, or what some people call single-family home neighborhoods. We don't have quite as high of a mixture as we used to. And so the knock and talk in all those neighborhoods doesn't make sense for us anymore. But again, that's because of our specific building that's been happening in our community. Okay, the groups that are walking around, they are made up of CSU staff members, city staff members. Every group has at least one police officer in it, either from the university or from the city, and then students. A lot of student government members, but we also had a really high participation from athletes, student athletes. And then sometimes we would have community members that would join us to also walk door to door. Before the folks would go out into the neighborhoods to walk as groups, we would have a training and a kickoff dinner. That dinner and training is also significant for this program because it part of the experience was the university president and either the mayor or city manager from the city of Fort Collins would come speak about the importance of our town-gown relationship. So it was a great visual reminder for everybody in the room about the working partnership that we have between the institution and the city. And so it was a great appreciation for all the town-gown work, but a big visual representation of our strong town-gown relationships that we have in our community. So we would have a welcome and an appreciation from city mayor or manager and the university president. And then we would do a training of like, okay, what are you actually going to do out in the neighborhoods? And that was helpful for people. And then we would send folks out into the neighborhoods to do the knock and talk. On the next slide, you'll see an example of one of the teams that goes out. When the teams are out there in the neighborhoods speaking to neighbors, whether again long-term residents or students, the biggest message we're pushing is get to know your neighbors. We know that if neighbors know each other, they are more likely to help take care of one another, keep the neighborhood safe. They have a bigger investment in their neighborhood. And if they have issues with neighbors, they are more likely to deal with those issues between themselves versus needing to involve third parties, and specifically folks like police, code compliance, or humane society if there's issues like around pets. Every year, we produce what we call our community welcome brochure, and that brochure has a ton of information about neighboring, about safety, about city codes and ordinances that we sometimes see cause tension in the neighborhoods. And so our teams that were out there, they have the community welcome brochures, as well as a couple of items that might be unique that year. But the biggest message that they're out there speaking about is neighboring. That's what we're really trying to remind folks of. Get to know your neighbors. If students or new neighbors move in, we're telling them, the least awkward time to go meet your neighbors is right now when you're new. And then long-term neighbors, we're also telling them, like, you also have a responsibility to go welcome the new neighbors. This shouldn't just be on the new folks that are moving in. Okay, on the next slide, I think I'm going to show y'all some data that we would collect. Okay, so when the teams are out in the neighborhoods, they would have this neighborhood assessment sheet where somebody on the team was responsible for recording how many total homes did they walk to, how many people did they connect with, and we specifically wanted them to differentiate how many long-term residents did they connect with or people that are not CSU students, and how many CSU students did they connect with. And then we were asking them about, okay, so based on your time in the neighborhood, does this neighborhood still feel like a high mix of students and long-term residents? So it was giving us some data about are there still a lot of student rentals in this neighborhood, or is the neighborhood shifting? Are there more homeowners or non-CSU student renters here? So we were getting some data from folks like that, and that was really helpful. And then every neighbor that we spoke to would be handed a pre-stamped postcard where they could offer us feedback about their experience with the program. And that postcard is what you're seeing on the right here. And so that was helpful for us, that they could fill it out and then just drop it in their mailbox and it would get mailed back to us. So we're trying to get feedback both from the groups that are out walking and then also from the neighbors about what their experience was like with the program. Then I think I might have one more slide. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are sunsetting this program mostly due to the fact that we have these big apartment complexes now that house so many of our students, but we are thinking about what's next. One, we have still found success with partnering with fraternity and sorority life, and I'll add in here sport clubs and also registered student organization leadership, for them to proactively go out and speak with the homes or with the students that are living in the homes that have traditionally been associated with organizational events. So we do have some houses in our community that are kind of passed down from member to member, and there tends to be a lot of social gatherings or parties at that event on behalf of the organization. So fraternity and sorority life and sport clubs and our registered student org leadership, they still want to go out on the first Wednesday to chat with those houses. So we'll continue to do that. We're also chatting with our property managers about, okay, what do we do in the beginning of the school year to kind of help set a positive neighboring message on your properties? Property managers are definitely very eager to have us come to their properties to do events, which is great, but we haven't landed yet on what's actually going to be attractive to students and meaningful and impactful. So we're trying to figure that out still. Lastly, I'll mention we are putting some effort into an off-campus orientation. We think that that's going to help us still get the neighboring message out to all students as they move off campus. Now, we know that we will not be able to require the orientation, so we are trying to work with the city, CSU partners, property managers, and some student representatives to figure out what's an online module that we can offer in a way where students understand the benefit up front, and find it worth their time. So we're learning from some other people right now on campus and other communities about what folks offer and how we could do that effectively. Okay, that's the end of my portion of the presentation. I think I'm passing it over to Molly.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for setting such a great tone for the rest of the panelists. Today, hi everyone, my name is Molly. I'm with Off-Campus Student Life in the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And today, just like Lindsay, I'll be talking about a few of our back-to-school programs and how we engage students and try to retain them throughout the academic year. Next slide, please. First of all, for those who are not familiar with the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, we are located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. A big population of our students live off campus. We have a lot of grads, undergrads, and young professionals that live in off campus. And if you take a look at the map on the right, many of our undergraduate students actually live in the highlighted area. UNC Chapel Hill is in a unique and very interesting location, which allows our students to live in the same neighborhood as a lot of our long-term residents who are raised and grew up in the community. A few of our prominent neighborhoods include Northside, Tin Top, Pine Knolls, and Cameron McCauley. As the Off-Campus Student Life Office, we view ourselves as the resource center to help connect students with long-term residents in the community. We try to set the tone for the rest of the academic year because we see that the first few months of the year is very crucial in terms of how we want to engage students. As the office, we try to encourage our students to interact with their neighbors. We help foster a sense of community through various various neighborhood events in collaboration with the town of Chapel Hill, the town of Carrboro, and local organizations such as Empowerment and the Marian Chick Jackson Jackson Center. We also provide really crucial information to all the stakeholders in the community. Our stakeholders include off-campus property managers, Carolina students, off-campus student life, as well as the people who live in the neighborhoods where our off-campus students live. Next slide, please. Next, I would like to highlight one of our most important program, which is the Good Neighbor Initiative. And our tagline is "Be kind, be mindful, and be a good neighbor." The Good Neighbor Initiative was founded in 2004. It was a collaboration between Empowerment, which was our local organization, with the Chapel PD. And over the span of 20 years, we have improved and added a few other events to help engage our students in the community. Our first event of the year, very similar to what Lindsay briefly talked about earlier in her presentation, we have our door-to-door knock where we recruited between 70 to 80 volunteers. Our volunteers include students that go to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, long-term residents in the community members, and the town of Chapel and town of Borough staff, as well as UNC staff. So through the door-to-door knock, our volunteers engage in very interesting conversation with our students who live in the neighborhood. They also provide a bunch of merch, such as cups, coasters, and the door hanger, which you can see. I included a screenshot of a door hanger that says "Hello, neighbor." On the door hanger, we have a bunch of really important information and useful resources for students to keep in mind. Things like alcohol risk and harm reductions, how to take care of the trash and recycling, code enforcement, contact information, and other information, and contact for students who have other general questions. And we also, through those conversations, encourage our students to register their events if they're planning on hosting any events throughout the rest of the academic year, which I'll be briefly talking about towards the end of the presentation. And through those door-to-door walk, we encourage students to come to our community cookout, which I also included a couple photos from the event. We like to call that a one-stop stop, where we encourage our students to come out, interact with community members, as well as meet with town staff. Next slide, please. Thank you. And as another important resource that we provide to our students is through the Tar Heel Citizens Time, which is an e-newsletter that we send out to around 20,000 students that live off campus. That issue includes a welcoming message from the town of Chapel Hill mayor, as well as the chancellor at UNC. We include information such as the fall housing fair that we host every year, the commuter alternative programs for students who live off campus, as well as our newest housing guide for students. We also include town and county updates and upcoming community events. Thank you. Next slide, please. And as our initiative to engage the community, we think it is really important to host and encourage repeated interactions to retain and maintain participation from our students. One of my favorite series of events at the beginning of the school year is the porch parties. The porch party is hosted by the Marion Cheek Jackson Center in various neighborhoods, literally in students' backyard, to encourage students to come out, socialize, enjoy meals with their neighbors, as well as to interact and get to know those who live down the street from them. And through those participation, personally, I think it is really important because most of the time students stay on campus the whole day, and by the end of the day, if they're like, oh, I want to interact with friends, but most of the events are happening on campus, so I don't feel like putting my clothes back on and then driving to campus to interact with friends. So that's why we decide to bring our community events literally to their backyard. Next slide, please. So here's a sneak peek for our events for the rest of the academic year. Through our engagement in the first few months of the year, we encourage our students to volunteer, seek out resources from local organizations, participate in arts events, work with local governments, or reach out to their local representatives and other on and off campus departments, and to help them interact with other community members. On this slide, you can see a few of our events. One of my favorite events is called Arts Through the Ages, which is also a series of art events where we do various arts to encourage students to come and be creative and use their creative energy to seek friendship and partnership with everyone else who live in the community. We also do a series of trash pickups in the community to encourage students to be more mindful of how they're impacting their neighborhoods. Next slide, please. And as promised, I'll be talking briefly about our party registration program. For those of you who are not familiar with this program, this is an all-year-long program which we try to emphasize at the beginning of the semester. The party registration program aims to promote aims to help support our students' social life by encouraging them to register their event. And if they do get any noise complaints, the police will directly reach out to them and give them a warning or an initial call to let them know they've received a noise complaint. And through the push of our GNI door-to-door knock and the community cookout at the beginning of the year, we see that it is probably one of the most successful programmings our office promote or host. This year we received over 400 registered events, only a couple cited addresses, and less than 60 noise complaints. And next slide, please. And through those events, I think that the Good Neighbor Initiative is definitely one of our most important programmings that our office push, as well as promote and work in collaboration with other on and off campus departments, as well as both the town of Chapel Hill, the town of Scarborough, and most importantly, our off-campus partners such as the Jackson Center and Empowerment. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to hop on a call, talk about our initiative, or answer any of your questions. And I would encourage you to take a look at our offcampus.unc.edu website, which has a bunch of other resources that we provide to our students, as well as our off-campus housing.unc website, which we also provide resources for students who live off-campus, as well as listings for students and our community members who are looking for off-campus housing. So yeah, that's all I have for you all today. I would like to pass the mic to Tom. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Molly. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon now, I guess. I'm Tom Fontaine. I'm the manager in State College, Pennsylvania, which is the host of Penn State University. We have been working on these various town-gown relationships for a long time as well. Excuse me. And what you're going to hear from me may be a little redundant also, I think, and you'll see why as we go through this. But I think have through the years have really worked hard to learn from other institutions, other host communities, as to what has worked well in those communities and what we have been able to do to be able to steal from those communities directly, I will acknowledge, and try to set up our own programs. A little bit about State College on the next slide. The borough itself is about 4.5 square miles. We have a 2020 population of 40,501 persons. As Beth Bagwell will acknowledge, we strongly believe that we were significantly undercounted in the 2020 census, but nonetheless, we're looking at about 9,000 to 9,500 people per square mile. So we have a lot of dense living arrangements, particularly in those neighborhoods at the edge of campus. And as you heard from Fort Collins, we also have seen a real boom in purpose-built student housing in State College at the edge of campus, which has contributed to additional growth in those student areas right next to campus. If you go to the next slide, the we through the years have worked hard in responding to the studentification of our neighborhoods. We have worked on a number of projects through the years, starting in the 60s up through 2008. And I would note in 2008 is when we started our Living in One Neighborhood program, or LION, which is the acronym that we designated, and is affiliating it with the Penn State Nittany Lion. And so we run a number of programs that we collectively refer to as our LION programs, and I'll talk about those as we go through. Next slide. We also have focused really strongly on developing collaboration. And we define collaboration as working jointly with others or together, especially in endeavors that benefit both parties, to cooperate and assist one another, and working closely to address the issues as opposed to just communicating or cooperating. We're trying to collaborate. And we broadly define community to include our long-term residents and our student residents, as well as those who work in State College but may not live here and commute in as well, and visitors as well. And so we've worked hard to set up that collaborative relationship to try to improve the overall quality of life. If you go to the next slide, we specifically identify Penn State and work closely with the Student Affairs Division of Student Affairs at Penn State, the town-gown connection between the borough and the university, and also our community members. And we define community members, and we're very intentional that we define that as both our long-term residents as well as our student residents. The next slide. Tom Miller, who is the former director of the National Research Center, we've stolen this quote from him. Is that really a best practice, or are you just practicing? And so we consciously set out to go visit our peer communities around the country to see how they were managing town-gown relations, and be able to assess how successful their programs had been and what might work well for us. We very specifically spent several days in Colorado, both in Fort Collins and Boulder, in a town-gown team that included people from the city government as well as from the university. And we really directly stole several things from those two communities that we still do at the beginning of each semester and throughout the fall in particular, but really year round, to build that town-gown relationship. We've also worked with Burlington and the University of Vermont and Amherst and UMass on looking at different programs that they operate, particularly at Amherst. We have an event that started in State College one year, I think it was 2007, when spring break occurred over State Patty's Day. And so the Penn State students started a make-believe State Patty's Day and called it State Patty's Day. And of course, Amherst has the Blarney Blowout. So we've compared notes with them on how to deal with that, as well as with Champaign, Illinois, and some of the other college towns that have those kinds of events. But we were able to learn a lot from these visits and come back with specific programming to address these issues. So if we go to the next slide, one of the key things that is integral to our programs really is the nature of this being a community building program. And we try to set expectations for living in the neighborhoods. We try to encourage positive interactions between all of our residents, whether they're student residents or long-term residents. We strongly subscribe to the concept that we are all in this together. We're all part of the community, and it's a process, not a specific project. And what may not seem to be working right now may start working later, and we continue to work through that process. And we really do that as we strive to make this philosophy part of the everyday culture in our community. The civic vitality is built on the capacity of people to trust one another, and that includes, again, both our long-term residents and student residents being able to live together in these neighborhoods. And we really strongly believe that citizens, community members, are responsible for quality of life. They have to be part of the process. If it's just the local government or the university trying to implement this top-down, our experience and what we've learned from other communities is that does not work very effectively. And then we think it's very important to measure results. It's important to know how well we're doing. And if there are things that we need to do differently, and one of the things I'll talk about as we go through today is how we have seen our Lion program morph through the years to address some of the things that we've learned through our data collection and through our experiences. Next slide. And so we focus really on trying to emphasize the 5 E's: the engagement, education, enforcement, evaluation, and environmental management. And most everything we do really is focused around those 5 E's, whether it's addressing high-risk drinking or noise in the neighborhoods or any of the factors that may affect quality of life in a detrimental way. We really try to emphasize these 5 E's. Go to the next slide. The quality of life measures that we look at are part of a national community survey that we do. We used to do it every year, and now we're doing it every 5 years. And the National Community Survey, we benchmark specifically against other college communities to see how we're faring. And we assess things like State College as a place to live. And what we find in most cases is that we continue to rank and benchmark at either high or above most of those standards. Where we're below, we continue to try to develop programs that are specifically related to the areas that we have fallen below. If you go to the next slide, noise is a great example, along with other kinds of complaints that we'll get, whether it's disorderly conduct, whether it's liquor violations, liquor law violations, drugs, so forth. And so we will measure these. Noise stands out consistently through these efforts in our neighborhoods as one of the leading complaints that we receive. And noise almost always is associated with something else going on that may be an impact on the quality of life that we need to address with our community members and our residents. And so if we go to the next slide, all of this resulted in the development of our Lion program, or Living in One Neighborhood. This is a town-gown partnership. We use this to deliver messages to students. Here it says non-students, but we call them long-term residents as well. This is an older slide before we changed some of the language we use, but we believe that everybody is part of the community, whether they're long-term residents or students. And so we try to emphasize that positive language. And then building community, that we're all in this together and we need to work together to make sure that we maintain a strong community. The first program that we started, and again, this is really similar in terms of the walk and talk that you heard about from Fort Collins. If you go to the next slide, you'll see what we called the Lion Walk. And we started this program very early in 2007 and 2008. And much like you heard about in the other two, both in Chapel Hill as well as Fort Collins, we're pairing groups of individuals to go through the neighborhoods. We have a Penn State student that was involved in Lion Walk. We would always have a police officer, either from the Penn State Police Department or the State College Police Department. We would have a Penn State administrator or someone from the Penn State staff and someone from the borough staff, including elected officials. And also the president of the university was frequently involved in this as well. And we would go through neighborhoods and knock on doors and share information. And we were very conscious to not try to single out student homes, but we went to both student homes as well as our long-term residence homes. And among the things that we would ask were, have you met your neighbors yet? And we did this during the first couple of weeks of class each fall, and found that it was very, very good and a very good program to help us get people to come together and begin to talk to each other, get to know their neighbors, and learn more about their neighborhood and what the expectations for living in the community and living in one neighborhood represented. If you go to the next slide, we have some pictures here of Lion Walk. You can see the teams. We have the Nittany Lion out with us, and we spend time, several hours. We have a dinner and the orientation, again, much like Fort Collins. and then we go out into the neighborhood and knock on doors and greet the residents in the community, again, whether they're long-term residents or whether they're just moving into the neighborhood. We tried to talk to all of them, and most people opened their doors and talked to us, and it was always a very good and very eventful program. But we did reach the point where it was almost becoming redundant with some people. We have students that are living off campus, often in the same neighborhoods for 2 to 3 years at least, and of course long-term residents who were here on a more permanent nature, and so it became a little redundant. And there was a point after about 10 years of this that we began to see that we weren't being quite as effective with Lion Walk, and so we transitioned to the next slide and started the Lion Dinner. This was the first replacement, and this was just an opportunity to have a lot of the same people that we talked about and mentioned in Lion Walk attend a dinner where we had opportunities to socialize and get to know each other in those settings. And we did that for a couple of years with the Lion Dinner. Found it to be effective as well, but again, it wasn't reaching the broader audience that we wanted. And so we did come out of Lion Dinner. If you go to the next slide, the latest transformation in this project is the Lion Bash. And the Lion Bash is a party, essentially, in downtown State College. It takes, we close about 3 blocks of one of the main streets that leads up to the Penn State campus and is actually in front of the municipal building in downtown State College. And it's a community resource fair and a block party. We have music, we have a number of community nonprofits and partnership groups. We have neighborhood associations that have tables. We have other organizations, including many student organizations that participate in this event. And this is always held again during the first 2 weeks or so of fall classes rather, and has been one of the really popular things that we do. It's always very well attended. You can see from the pictures that we do get a large number of folks. And again, we get a combination of student participants as well as our long-term residents. And we have been doing this now for several years and continue to find it to be one of the more successful things that we've been able to accomplish in terms of that welcome back period. In addition to these Lion programs directly, there's a couple of other things that I'll mention and go to the First 8 Weeks Task Force. And this is a partnership of all of the organizations that are listed on this slide. I won't read them all, but we include student organizations like the Interfraternity Council. We have the Penn State Office of Student Conduct. We have the Penn State Police. We have some of our surrounding township police departments and emergency management involved in this. And this is a group that meets for the first, we called it the first 8 weeks, and the goal was to start with this for the first 8 weeks to really emphasize and see where problems were occurring and then address those specific problems. So if we were getting called back to the same house repeatedly in the early parts of the semester, we would engage with the residents in that house and begin to talk through the issues that we were having. And if it really rose to a high level, it might even result in engaging with the Office of Student Conduct and others to make sure that we set expectations about living in the neighborhood early in the semester. What we found was, and I will confess, it depends a lot on football season and the football schedule, but some years we needed more than 8 weeks because the November football schedule had some pretty big high-profile games that tended to also create some problems. And so sometimes this program, instead of being the first 8 weeks, turns into the first 10 or 12 weeks. We still call it F8 though, because that's the acronym that is stuck. But we found it to be helpful again in trying to address the problems and begin to deal with those before they become habits and expectations through the year. Go to the next slide and actually maybe skip past this one because I've already talked about that one. And then lessons learned. And I think the main lessons that we have learned are listed here. We've learned to be patient. We've learned that the language we use is important, and I mentioned that earlier. We don't refer to long-term residents as non-student residents. They are long-term residents and student residents, and we think that's important because we all want to belong. We've borrowed heavily from other communities and campuses. Have shown consistently that we need to be flexible in our approaches and be able to make modifications and changes to the programming that we do to try to make sure we communicate well. We publish an annual Lion Guide as well to talk to our students about particularly our students, about different programs in the community and things that they need to know about, ranging from landlord-tenant issues to various ordinances and things that they need to know. And that program has really evolved through the years. We are constantly updating that, adding and deleting things from the Lion Guide, depending on what we've learned through the process. The next one too, I think really is critical, and student involvement. If there isn't student involvement, many of these programs just simply are not very effective. And so we really work hard with our student organizations, the student government, our interfraternity council, Panhellenic, and a number of other student groups that have big footprints off campus, and we work hard with them to make sure that these things are effective. And then partnerships, including neighborhoods, as well as other agencies within the community. And the town gown partnership between Penn State and State College is very important. I mentioned Greek life, and I would also note landlords, I think, are important. And I think we're seeing an increase in the importance of landlords and property management companies being involved, as we have seen the very rapid growth in purpose-built student housing in our areas. Last thing is, this takes a lot of work. It's not a simple process. And if we're going to continue to upgrade and make sure that our communities are good, safe environments that are inviting for people to live, it's important to do that work. Again, about 25% of our population turns over every year with graduation, as most of your communities also experience. And so it really is critical to do this work. We have seen in State College a major shift to off-campus living in general over the past 50 or 60 years, going from actually having more students living on campus to now having substantially more students living off campus, somewhere in the neighborhood of 35,000 students living on campus and about 15 or 20,000 students living on campus. So major changes in the community, but we find that these programs have really helped us to address those issues and make our community a livable community for everyone, student and long-term residents alike. So thank you very much. And I think that concludes my comments. I'll turn it back to Validia.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you to all the presenters. We will switch it over to question and answer now. And the first question that we have, if we can't plan something as large as these examples, what are suggestions of how to scale for smaller events?
I can provide an example. I don't know if this is quite getting at the question, because I don't know if it's, maybe it is. For many years, Colorado State University and the city of Fort Collins used to partner on a much smaller event. We called it Get the Scoop. Get the Scoop occurred on the first weekend of August, because that is when many of our leases in our detached homes or single family neighborhoods is when they usually started on August 1. And so a lot of students or new neighbors, if they were moving in, they oftentimes were moving in that first weekend of August. So a group of us made up of CSU staff and city staff used to drive around in an ice cream truck giving away free ice cream. And we called it Get the Scoop because the idea was you would get a free scoop of ice cream and you would get the scoop on neighboring. And we would drive around these neighborhoods with this huge sign that we had made on the side. We would cover up everything on the ice cream truck, just said free ice cream, and play the music and all this stuff. And the idea was we were trying to catch people right as they moved in, and we would want a group of people to approach us at the same time, so neighbors were meeting in the moment. The event was very easy to plan because you hire an ice cream truck, you've got a few university city staff members that commit to doing this on a Saturday or Sunday. We would try and do it like midday, like a 10 to 1, 10 to 2, something like that. And honestly, we didn't even put out advertising to say we were coming. It was just if we caught you out there, come out, chat with us, all the things. And Tom, I appreciated what you shared about that your line walk at times felt redundant, because I definitely get that at Community Welcome, where we would come across houses and they'd be like, I've lived here 17 years, I know. And sometimes I kind of liked the redundancy. So I was like, okay, so talk to us about how you live out this good neighboring that we're trying to teach, and that was really helpful. But Get the Scoop was intentionally redundant with minimal staff effort, because we would catch people right as they're moving in, and then we would come out to those same neighborhoods 3 weeks later to be like, oh yeah, remember we chatted with you? Have you talked to your neighbors since? What have you learned? So there was some intentionality to have it so close to one another. But I get it, for people that have a much smaller budget or a much smaller team, we liked Get the Scoop as a manageable event, easy to plan, pretty cheap. It cost us about $1,000 total, not including staff time. $1,000 was like to get the sign printed and the amount of money we put into ice cream. Then we actually did bring out that event a couple of years to the apartment complexes. So the apartment complex would tell the whole complex, free ice cream downstairs, come down and we'd give out the ice cream, chat about neighboring, etc. I don't think that quite hits what we're trying to get to in the apartment complexes, so we discontinued it. But anyways, that is an example of a small scale event that we did run for many years at Colorado State University, City of Fort Collins.
I could throw in too. We do meetings with neighborhood associations and student groups, and we try to do combined neighborhood association student group meetings as well. And we usually do those 2 or 3 times a year, and we might have 10 or 12 people in the room. So it doesn't reach a large audience, but it reaches student leaders and neighborhood leaders. And then we ask them to convey that. So those are also some of the smaller scale things that we would do here in State College that has also helped and proven effective here.
We also have another small event called NEAT. So the NEAT initiative, it happens all throughout the school year, but basically we set up a table behind a bar at an intersection where a lot of our students live, and the intersection that leads to the downtown Chapel Hill, where our students would walk past to go downtown. So we give out water and snacks to students that walk past, and on those snacks we have a sticker of our our GNI, Good Neighbor Initiative, that says "Be kind, be mindful," and remind students to be quiet while walking to and from the neighborhood, especially if they're returning back from downtown. So it's just like a nice interaction where our staff gets to meet students and remind them of different ways of how to portray themselves as student residents in the neighborhood.
Thank you so much for that. We have another question that we might have already touched base a little bit on. Have you changed any of the door-to-door programs, given that many people don't answer the door anymore?
Well, yeah, and as I mentioned, I think in State College, one of the reasons that we stopped doing the knock and talk programs, the walk and talk, whichever acronym you want to use there. But we did that partially for that reason. Certainly, is that we found people weren't answering the door. And so we've shifted to these other events, and Lion Bash here being very, very popular, that we have a lot of people get involved with and very engaged in that process. We do a program that we have police patrols in neighborhoods as well. We particularly emphasize the early fall semester, and they may do if they see evidence that a large party is going to occur at a particular property, they may knock on the door and have conversations and do things like that. So we've done some of those things to shift here in State College, um, away from actually going door to door and knocking on the doors to be able to communicate the information to those neighborhood residents, including both, again, students as well as long-term residents.
Thanks, Tom. Personally, from my very, very limited experience with the GNI door-to-door knock, I feel like a lot of our residents, including students and long-term residents, actually open their door. And if they don't answer the door, we just leave the cups, coasters, stickers, and whatever resources we bring with us at the door so that they know that we have swing by their neighborhood. We also have a small card that says, "Sorry, we miss you," and we have our contact information on there. And from a few anecdotes that we received from our volunteers that participated in the door-to-door knock, a lot of the neighbors are like, especially long-term neighbors, they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember you guys from the last couple of years. We always look forward to this interaction," and it's really heartwarming that like neighbors have learned to expect us to to do the door-to-door event from year to year.
Yeah, we had some similar experiences, particularly the last 2 years that we did community welcome. So that would have been fall 24, fall 23, where less people are answering the door. We, over the last couple of years, have done some mailings out to the neighborhoods around campus. We work with our city to kind of do like a geo fence and say, okay, we need all the addresses in these areas, and we'll push out postcards around neighboring or something else that might be more like specifically timely. We also, the last couple of years, have partnered up with our code compliance when they go around and do snow enforcement, because we're required to shovel our sidewalks when snow comes through. If there is someone who has not shoveled their snow, and they're either going to get a warning or they're going to get a citation or an abatement notice, that the code enforcement officer, it's already part of their practice that they put it up on the folks' door to let them know. And so we created a good neighboring snow shoveling kind of quarter sheet flyer that would get added into what got put on that person's door. So that's been helpful. And then we've also had some efforts where we've, throughout the year, our students, we've done different neighborhoods where we've still walked door to door, but we're just hanging door hangers and we never actually knock. So we've done that as well. But it is an unfortunate, I think, unfortunate trend in our society that, yes, less people answer the door. And I'm not judging people for why they choose not to. I think there's some safety concerns and things like that. So I'm not judgmental of it, but it's unfortunate because our neighboring interactions are in person. And I think that in-person education or interactions are so important to have. Similarly, my office remains very committed to having in-person roommate meet and matches events, because it's going to be a whole in-person experience as roommates. And so, yes, online is helpful, but I think the in-person is still helpful. And so, or maybe this is me slow to change. I don't know. I'm a millennial, and sometimes I'm like, okay, am I one of the older generations now that's not letting go of stuff? So maybe.
All right, so we have one last question, and that is, how do you reach people in the large-scale apartment buildings?
I can share one thing here that we've been doing, and we have a lot to learn from others, I think, that have done more, like, I'm going to say, like, urban style outreach for longer than we have in Fort Collins. But we have a program, we do call it the Good Neighbor Program. It is not around neighboring like this. I know the name is confusing. We've talked about maybe switching this up. But it is a program that property managers can choose to participate in if they agree to abide by a higher ethical standard that is set by off-campus life. Tom, I appreciated your language earlier of like, oh, I've stolen directly from other communities. I think we all give and take. If anybody were to look at Texas State University's retired ACT Ally program, whoa, my program looks real similar purposely to what they used to do. And anyways, so if property managers agree to abide by these higher ethical standards, then they can be recognized as a good neighbor, as a participant in our Good Neighbor program. And so when students are looking for off-campus housing, we tell them to look at the list of good neighbors to make it as part of their consideration, etc. Anyways, our Good Neighbor properties, which are currently exclusively big apartment complexes, although I do want to expand that, and I'm doing some work this year to see if I can expand that. we require our Good Neighbor properties to include some information about the program in their packet, move-in packet. And so in there, it talks about being the property being a good neighbor and what that means. But we also put in information in there about resources to CSU or the city. And so that's a way that we get messaging out, at least to our properties that participate in the program. But we're still missing big properties. And I struggle sometimes with, okay, how much effort am I putting into this program versus what's measurable? It's a pretty low effort for me to do that, but I don't have a way to directly measure the impact of that. I mean, I guess I could. I don't know. Hard to measure. Anyways, that's just one example.
Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh,
Quick.
sorry. I'll just
If you can quickly answer that question, and then we'll wrap up, please.
definitely. Thank you so much, Valeria. So with UNC Chapel Hill, we do not currently work directly with our off-campus partners, such as big apartment complexes, but we have looked into how we can communicate and collaborate with off-campus partners, because currently we work with around 40 apartment complexes and we promote them on our website. And earlier this year, we were considering, just like Lindsay said, including information in the welcome packages where students who just move into the apartment complex get those information and learn about how to be good partners. The only challenge is that most of the properties do not collect information whether or not their tenant is a student at UNC. So that's something that we're trying to navigate and work with apartment complexes on. Thank you.
Tom, do you have anything to add?
Well, I just noted, and I did mention, we work closely with property management companies on a number of issues. I know when we had gathering limits, for example, during the COVID years, we work very closely with our property management companies to communicate the information to their residents and their tenants in those buildings. But I think this is still a work in progress. I'm not sure we have the solutions. We've seen this huge increase in building, as I know many college towns have seen across the country with these purpose-built student apartment buildings. And I think we're still trying to figure out the best way to work with those students, because we've had a large number of students living in those buildings that right at the edge of campus in our case. And so it's added to some of the issues that we see in the vicinity around those buildings as well in the neighborhood. So it's a work in progress is the best I can tell you. I don't know that I have a good answer other than work with property management companies and help get the word out and work with them to address those issues.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a process, not a project, right? So I think that's one of the lessons that you shared with us, Tom, that you've learned. And so I want to thank all of the panelists and sharing all the expertise, and to our audience, everyone here, for participating in the insightful discussion. I just want to share the key insights from our discussion, which included the historical evolution of the Back to School programs, strengthening town and gown relationships and how important that is, and the collaboration, innovative approaches, and how we've learned various ways on how to create innovative programs, lessons learned from the presenters and their events, and then current initiatives, everything from the front porch gatherings and the Lion Bash. So Beth had to step out of the meeting to go to a different one, but I want to share that we will be sending out information regarding the next webinar, so stay tuned for that. And then also, I want to remind everyone of the ITGA conference registration is still open, and this session is being recorded and the PowerPoint will be shared via email. And